I am Bogdan Dumitriu. I am the project officer in charge of eDelivery, as Monica already mentioned. And I will be getting us started today by explaining a little bit of background about the eDelivery building block. I'm really happy to see that all the places in the webinar were taken. Not everybody joined yet, but I hope that we will see all the attendees, all the 10 attendees that we sent the invitation to joining in the following minutes. We saw also that there were quite different profiles that registered for the webinar. You come to us from the public sector, from the private sector, from different functions in these two areas. Which is exactly what we want to see, because eDelivery is not targeted to the public sector or to the private sector. It's really meant to promote interoperability between inter and intra public and private sector. So I think it's a very nice proof of that, the diversity we see in the audience to this webinar as well. I want to provide you with a little bit of a frame in which you can better place the technical session that my colleague Joanna will be doing. And this frame is called the eDelivery building block. I will remind you that this is an introductory webinar, which is why you will probably not find a lot of the latest breaking news on eDelivery. It's really meant to introduce you to eDelivery and to help you see what it means to use eDelivery in a very practical sense. Some of you may already have had previous interactions with the building block, and if that's the case, I'm sure that you will still find some of the information in the webinar relevant. But let me reassure you once again, as Monica already hinted at, that we are planning further events in the autumn and early 2023, where we will explain also other things having to do with what's been happening in eDelivery, what is new in eDelivery, what are we planning for the next year or two, etc., etc. Nevertheless, today it's about how do you use eDelivery at a very basic level, what is eDelivery, and that's what we will be focusing on. eDelivery is part, if you could go back to the previous slide, Joanna, thank you. So eDelivery is part of family of so-called building blocks. Today, we are called the Digital Europe building blocks. Those of you who were with us in earlier years, of course, know us as the CEF building blocks, but this is, in the meantime, a new world, a new financial framework, and the building blocks have moved to a new name as well, alongside everything else. What is the family of building blocks approach? Well, the approach is that we want to promote open standards and specifications rather than products. I think this is a key approach, or a key element of our approach, which I want to stress very much, in order to achieve interoperability. The goal is to achieve interoperability, to promote interoperability through reuse and through designing systems so that they use the same standards, while, of course, keeping it possible that we use different products that implement those standards to make the IT systems a reality. Of course, building blocks take different shapes and forms. You see a few of the building blocks listed on the right-hand side, but even as you dive deeper into any of them, you will see that some of them are about standards, others are about software products, others are about services, and most usually, in fact, it is a mix of these three. So the name, the umbrella of a building block usually covers something which is very rich underneath, and that is multifaceted. And I think I would like to invite you to visit our website to learn more about the individual service offerings of the different building blocks. Of course, where eDelivery is concerned, I will get a bit more into the details today. So if you can move to the next slide, thank you, Joanna. How do you use a building block, first and foremost, in a more practical sense this time? Well, the most typical approach is that you reuse the existing solutions, whether they are the ones created in the building block itself, or whether they are created from vendors from the market, and that usually have passed conformance testing with our conformance testing service. So either of these two options is what 99.99% of the users will be doing. Of course, if you are a system integrator, or if you have a very, very, very specific use case where you want to implement the specifications yourself, then you also have the option to build a software that is conformant to the specifications adopted by one or the other of the building blocks. But this is, as I said, a rather rare occurrence. Most typically, if you have a project you need to get started, you would be looking at buying or reusing an existing product. If you can move to the next slide, please, Joanna. This gives you a nice idea about the evolution of the adoption of building blocks throughout the year. So we've been, we've existed under this name since 2014, and there was a lot of work done to get this off the ground. But as you see today in 2022, we are looking at quite impressive numbers, if I can say so myself. We have 338 projects that are reusing a building block, or 88 committed to analyze, 53 committed to reuse. So we have engaged as a family of building blocks with plenty of projects. Of course, these are projects, not necessarily users. Users you will have in the hundreds of thousands or even millions, because behind the systems that are reusing building blocks, you have communities of users that are much bigger in terms of numbers than the number of projects themselves. And there is finally a nice statistic that we see an increase in reuse of 150% since 2018. And with this, I come to the focus of the webinar today, which is eDelivery. And I want to make sure you understand, first of all, what eDelivery tries to do, and then some of its most important characteristics. eDelivery is about exchanging data or documents. In the end, we are exchanging bits and bytes, just like all IT software out there. So those can, of course, be a meaningful document. It can be a random series of octets that somebody has to make sense out of. But the key concept is we are not specific to a typical or to a payload. We are simply there to help you transmit whatever you need to transmit. It can be one document, it can be 10 documents, it can be a big document, it can be a small document, it can be a structured document, something like XML or JSON or what have you. It can be an unstructured document like a PDF, a Word, an Excel, and so much more. So there are no limits. Essentially, we will transport in a secure way, in a reliable way, the data that you need to move from a sender to a recipient in a mesh network. So it's, of course, always about connecting multiple parties. We are not promoting necessarily delivery as a bilateral communication solution as much as we are promoting it as a solution for a network of IT systems that need to communicate to one another. To achieve that, of course, we put in place all of the services and specifications that I will get into a bit later, but some of the main characteristics that define the building block have to do with interoperability, which I already mentioned. It's really, what I like to say here is that we are not looking at interoperability inside a given project. That is always going to be achieved by default. If you have a project and you work with an agreed protocol, you will always have interoperability inside of that project. That is a given. Unless you have that basic level, you don't really have a distributed system that is able to communicate. However, what we often see in our work is that you have a project that is developed in one sector and a project that is developed in another sector, or maybe they are even in the same sector, but they are developed by different communities of people dealing with, let's say, taxation, or dealing with e-health, or dealing with e-justice, or several other sectors. And that's where you get the benefit, the extra benefit of cross-domain, cross-project, cross-sector interoperability if you build using common standards. So this is the interoperability we are promoting, we are sustaining, and I think this is important to understand. I will not go through all of the other ones, but I will just highlight briefly what we mean when we say that we are about also security and accountability. So when you have to deal with securing transportation, of course, you will have some initial thinking around the issue. You will put in place security measures that certainly will be adequate to the use case. But at some point, your business is not transporting data, exchanging data. Your business is going to be about exchanging specific data and having workflows having to do with that specific data. So security will not be at the core of your preoccupations 10 years down the road. And this is, I think, where it's important to see the benefit, the value in building with building blocks that have as a core value to monitor the implementation of security and to ensure that this is not just done once, but it's done in a permanent way. And this way, you, of course, benefit from maintenance of your level of security, not just of the initial level of security that you typically can achieve on your own as well. Accountability, on the other hand, is really about having confirmation that a transfer of data from left to right, from right to left took place, and that it took place in a way that is confirmed by the receiver. This is done through the use of digital signatures, and this gives you a certain level of certainty if you have a legal challenge that whatever transmission of data that had to take place did indeed take place. And the features that are built into the protocol give you this accountability when you rely on eDelivery. We can move to the next one, since, as I said, I will not spend more time on the characteristics at this moment. For those of you who are here hearing about eDelivery for the first time, I think this is a very interesting analogy to kind of start your assimilation process with by making a comparison with the paper world, with the physical world. In the physical world, of course, we are very familiar since decades ago with the postal system. And what is the value proposition of the postal system? It is to transfer envelopes, to transfer messages, to transfer packages, to transfer whatever you want to transfer from a sender to a receiver in a way that the sender and the receiver don't really have to worry about. So what is the typical process? You can write a letter or you can prepare a package. In the end, it's conceptually the same thing. You need to know where you are going to send it or who you are going to send it to, but it's not enough to know who you are going to send it to. You need to know also their address. And that's something you typically have to look up. Well, either you know it in advance, or if you don't know it, you will look it up on the internet or in some directory of some kind. And you will write that on the envelope, on the package, so that the postal system knows who to send this message to. Then you will put your message in an envelope, and I think this is an important step because from the point of view of the post, they don't care what you put in the envelope. Of course, we're not talking here about illegal things. I'm just saying if you put a postcard, if you put a letter, if you put a bill, if you put something which is very, very specific to a communication, they really are agnostic, and just like the post office is agnostic in the paper world, we are agnostic in the electronic world of what you need to transport. I think this is a key part of the analogy because it gives you really the feeling that eDelivery doesn't give you a specific format, a specific set of constraints on what you can put in your package. Of course, if you are going to create a package of 100 kilo, it might cost more to transfer, which of course in electronic terms, it means that it will take you higher level of resources and longer time to do the transfer. But in the end, you can just as well package 100 kilos as you can 1 gram, and it doesn't make any difference. It's the same for eDelivery. So once you put it in the envelope, you put it in the post box. And the nice thing there is that you don't have to care what happens with your message after that. It will be the post office that deals with that. And there you have also this concept of distribution, which works very well for the analogy, because the post office is not made of a single organism that handles delivery around the world. It's really a very, very distributed system, a decentralized system, where you have the post office in different places that will interact with one another to get your package, your letter from the local post office where you submit it to some kind of remote post office that can deal with transporting it to its eventual recipient. And that's also interesting to note as an analogy, because just in the same way we promoted eDelivery where you have to integrate with a local access point, as we call it, a local agent, let's put it like that, which takes over what you need to transfer, and then it hands it over in a way that is transparent to you. You don't have to really care about it, to some kind of remote agent, which can then know different rules for doing the distribution on its own end. So, of course, there needs to be a shared addressing mode, But other than that, the distribution will take place without you having to know the specific arrangements that are in place on the receiver side. So that's their own post office that has to know them, but not your post office, and let alone you yourself. And we can move to the next slide now to see a little bit more what this means when we now move back to the electronic world. So you see these concepts are represented here through the so-called access points, which you see labeled as number 2 and number 3 in the picture on the right. And those access points are really the equivalent of the local post office. So your local post office, let's say if you're the sender, is the number 2. The remote post office, the one on the side of the recipient, is number 3. And you have to give your message to your post office, and then it will be the post offices among each other who can transfer the message, get some kind of acknowledgement of receipt and so on. And then the remote post office will hand it over to the recipient. Of course, there are a lot of technical steps that have to take place for this to happen. And these will be explained in much more detail by Ioana when she will take you through the practical example. But I think conceptually, this is what I wanted to make relatively clear. We can go to the next slide to see more of an architectural perspective, a similar representation, but in a more architectural way, where you actually see the IT systems. We call them backends in a generic way, but you should understand them as IT systems that pre-exist. Usually they pre-exist, but they can also be created once you start your project, and that don't really have to be modified in a significant way to interact with an access point. So of course there will have to be some level of integration being done, but by and large your backend system remains as it is. It doesn't, the eDelivery model doesn't put any constraints on how to adapt your backend system. It provides more or less messaging as a service that you can leverage in order to reduce the scope of your own investment. And the way this works in this picture is called, or what we call, a four-corner model, because you have the two backends that we refer to as the corners 1 and corners 4, which are the actual systems that need to send data to one another. But then instead of directly connecting or directing, which would be a two-corner model, or connecting through a single central point, which would be a three-corner model, the model proposed by eDelivery is a four-corner one, because there you have, in addition to the back-end systems, each of them has a counterpart access point, which forms the inner corners of the model, the corners 2 and 3. So when you will hear Ioana, and she will come back to this model a little bit later, discussing the four-corner model, just know that this is, I mean, what she will show you will be an instantiation, a specific way to put this model into practice with her own demonstration. But in the end, the model will be the same, even if you're talking about real IT systems rather than what she will be using, which is a SOAP UI to simulate a backend, for instance. So we can move with this to the next slide. Finally, before handing over to Ioana to give you the hands-on experience, I want to take a little bit of an overview of what we actually offer in terms of services, because so far I've been focusing on just what eDelivery is about, but I also want to make sure you know what we actually offer in a more concrete sense. Strangely enough, I will start on the bottom with the green part, which we call technical specifications. And there, especially the three ones on the left, are very clear specifications that we use to define three separate areas that we cover in the eDelivery building block. The most important and the most widely used ones are the specifications of what an access point is meant to use as a protocol. But then we also have two further specifications called SMP and SML, which define specifications for how you can look up recipient or the access point, more concretely, of a recipient that you want to send a message to. So I will not get into this because this is already used only in a subset of eDelivery based projects, but I think it's good that you know that we also have a model of dynamic discovery, which allows more, let's say, bigger networks to be maintained in a more dynamic way than having them pre-configured by hand. Then we also have some guidance, which is on the right-hand side of the green area. I will not get too much into those. Just know that they are present on our website, and you can consult them, and they can be quite helpful when you do your designs. Then I'm moving now to the left, the blue area, which lists the sample software that we are maintaining. We actually have sample implementations for each of the three specifications I was mentioning. So we have a sample implementation of an access point, which is called Domibus. This is the name of the product that Joanna will be also using in her demonstration. Then we have implementations of the other two specifications, which are called SMP and BDMSL. Those are the products that implement the SMP and SML specifications respectively. Then we move to the operational services in the middle. We have two managed services. One of them is to provide certificates, digital certificates, which are the way you establish trust in an eDelivery network. So if you want to use eDelivery, then we have a service to provide you with certificates that you can use in an eDelivery context. And separately, we have a service to provide you with the SML product as a service. So whereas in the case of access points and service metadata publishers, the model is that you will have to select a product and then deal with the deployment, with the operations and so on. In the case of SML, you can still do that, of course, but for a baseline service, we actually offer SML as a service. Which you can use by making a request to us, and then we will create the necessary technical configuration for you to be able to use it relatively quickly. Then we have testing services, connectivity and conformance testing. Connectivity testing is what you will, in a sense, try today. It's a way to validate that the access point that you have installed is properly configured and installed to at least be able to exchange messages with another access point that is on our side. And then we have the conformance testing, which is targeting vendors of eDelivery conformance software. So this is not for regular users as much as it is for software vendors who want to build software according to our specifications. And then they can come to us and do conformance testing of that software in order for us to be able to assess if they are following all the requirements of our specifications. Finally, we have training and deployment assistance and business hours service desk that you can use in case you have any questions, technical issues, if you have some kind of troubleshooting assistance that you need, etc. So we are there. We have a team of people there who can take care of such questions. Finally, on the stakeholder management side, we have several tools for doing self-assessment to see how fit eDelivery is in your case, cost estimation to see a little bit about how much it would cost to get started with eDelivery, onboarding of stakeholders. So if you want us to have a bilateral discussion, this is available. And of course, we are doing webinars, we are doing newsletters and so forth, which is all being handled by our stakeholder management office. With this, we can move to the last slide from my part of the presentation, which is just to show you the evolution of the conformant AS4 solutions since 2016 onward. So you can see we started at 1 or 2 back in 2016, and in the meantime we have conformance tested 30 solutions that are now listed on our website. So these are all alternatives or options other than Domibus itself. So Domibus is the software we are maintaining, and then there are 29 other products which are equally complex, equally interesting to explore, and that you can have a look at depending on your specific criteria for selecting the products. I really want to highlight this because this goes hand in hand with the message I had on one of the earlier slides about not being locked in to a specific vendor. So even if Domibus one day disappears, if you build with eDelivery, you have other products that implement the same standard, and you can, of course, have a migration, and you know that you will not be left with a system that uses a product that is going to be discontinued at some point, but instead you have a rich ecosystem that you can rely on for long-term sustainability. This is not to say that Domibus is not going to be there for 10 more years. It's just to reassure you that even if things change, the way we see the project strategically is really anchored in a wide market support rather than a specific European Commission centered support. With this, I think I will stop here and let Joanna take you through the rest of the session. And of course, I will be available for questions later on towards the end of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bogdan. Hello, everyone. I am Ioana Drăgușanu, and we will be doing together the hands-on session. So now that you learned from my colleague Bogdan about eDelivery and about the service offering of eDelivery, it is my goal in the next 45 minutes to show you how quick and easy it is to actually get started and to send your first AS4 message. For this, we will be using Docker eDelivery deployed on the Docker container. And because it takes a bit of time to launch the instances, I will immediately start with that. I trust that you already pulled the images that were provided to you in the invitation. I have them in my environment. I will show it. So right here on the Docker desktop, you should see my dashboard, and I have no containers started yet, but I have the two images that were previously downloaded, pulled from the public Docker Hub to be able to use them in a timely manner in this webinar. So I prepared especially for this webinar a zip with all the commands and all the files that we are going to use. And I will provide you the link in the chat. So please download this zip. I will perform the exact same steps as you will do. So I will also click on the link and download the zip. Please make sure that you are aware of the location where you are downloading. I will click now to unzip it. And I put it in my downloads folder. So this is the webinar. Please unzip it. I will wait a few seconds for you to download the zip and unzip it. If you have any issues, please write in the chat or raise your hand. Yes, the zip, so we have a question if we can provide the webinar zip URL. It is in the chat. I already provided it. I will do it one more. Do you see it now? Okay, so I have a thumbs up that it's there. Thank you. In this zip file, we have several files. The important one right now, it is the webinar util. Please open it with your preferred editor. I will use BBEdit. And in here, there are several commands that we are going to use today to start the Docker containers. And the first one is Docker Compose app. So I will open first a terminal. I will go to the location of the webinar, and this is download webinar in my case. I will wait for you a few seconds to go to this location. This is what you should have inside. And as you can see, there is a Docker Compose YAML file, and there is also a Docker Compose C2, C3 YAML file. We will be using the default one, Docker Compose YAML file, because in this webinar, we are going to start one Domibus instance, and we are going to connect our Domibus instance to an external one that is hosted in the cloud, and make the connectivity between the two. If you need to test on your local environment, then you can use the second file, the Docker Compose C2, C3 YAML, which starts two Domibus instances, and you can connect, you can use one as a sender and the second as a receiver, and then exchange messages between them. So to start the instances, I will go to the webinar util. And I will copy the second command, docker compose up, and we'll run it in a detach mode. So I am copying this. I will go to the terminal and paste it. This is the command, and now once I click on this, the Docker instance will start launching, and I will do this so you can see. If we want to see the logs that what is going on during this time, we have another command in here, and this is docker compose logs. I will add a -f to have it always on. So right now Domibus is starting, and meanwhile I will walk you through the webinar steps, so to give it time to start. So about the hands-on session, you already saw this, the four-corner model. The messaging infrastructure of eDelivery is based on the four-corner model. In this four-corner model, we have two backend systems, C1 and C4, which were developed totally independent from each other. And these two backend systems want to exchange messages between each other in a reliable and secure way. For this, C1 will use the access point C2 and C4 will use the access point C3. The two access points are able to communicate via the AS4 profile, the eDelivery AS4 profile, and in a very secure and reliable way. The implementation of the two access points, for the implementation of the two access points, we will be using Domibus. And for the simulation of C1 and C4, we will be using SoapUI. So, as I said, SoapUI is a substitute for Corner 1 and Corner 4. And Domibus, it is the sample implementation and open source project of the AS4 access point maintained by the European Commission. Domibus may be used as a working solution in a production environment. Still, the users of the sample implementation remain fully responsible for the integration between the backend system and the Domibus for deployment and operation. To facilitate the integration between the backend system and Domibus, Domibus offers 3 default plugins to integrate with the backend systems that are capable of integrating with nearly any back office application. These plugins are a web service plugin, which we will be using during this webinar. It is capable of issuing, receiving, submit requests, SOAP requests, download, list pending messages. Then we have a JMS plugin, which is a Java messaging queue to exchange messages within the Java queues. And finally, one very simple file system plugin for simple drop in, drop out of the messages. Now, the steps, as I said in the beginning, there will be the launch of the Docker instance, which we already did. And once the instance has started, we will go to the configuration, where we talk about the processing mode files and about the digital certificates. And finally, we will go to the runtime scenario, where we actually exchange an AS4 message, and we look it up to see that it was successfully acknowledged and received by the receiving access point. Now, the launch of the instances, we already did this step. We are using a Docker image for Domibus 5.0. Domibus 5.0 is the latest version of Domibus. It was recently released. For starting Domibus, we are using Tomcat. So Domibus WAR is deployed on the Tomcat application server, Tomcat 9, and it is connected to a MySQL database, which starts in a different container. So we have two Docker containers, one for Tomcat with Domibus and one for MySQL with the Domibus user and the Domibus schema and tables and everything that is needed. The two images are publicly available on the Docker, on the public Docker hub. For now, they are test images. They are in the Domibus test account. By the end of the year, we plan to have the production, a production ready image for Tomcat and MySQL. Now, before we go on to the configuration, I will just go back to my dashboard, to my Docker dashboard. And in the Docker dashboard, we go to the containers. We see that in the webinar network, we have two containers, Tomcat C2 and MySQL C2. Now, if we go to the logs, we will see here that Domibus has started. And to test this, please go to the editor where you opened the webinar util and copy the endpoint. This is the endpoint of Domibus, the local endpoint. Open a browser. I have the Chrome browser in here. And I will paste the endpoint of Domibus in here. It is HTTP localhost. I configured the port to be 8082. All of you have the same port, 8082, and then /Domibus. Oh, let me try again. I'll give it a few moments. Let me check in the Docker dashboard. I think it is still starting up. I will wait a bit more. Normally it takes around 5 minutes, but now with the webinar going on, it might take a bit longer. So I will just look here and wait. Please let me know if you managed to start Domibus in the chat. I'm trying again. Okay, thank you. So we have one confirmation that it's all good, and the admin console login screen. I will wait a bit on my side to have it started. So to log in the admin console, you will need to use the user admin and the password 123456. The Domibus instance that we are going to connect to, that is available in the cloud, the link is right here. You can copy it from the webinar util file. I will also put it in the chat. And I will first open this instance until my instance starts. So I will go in a different page, in a different window, and I will open this one. It has the same user and password. Okay, so after we log in, I will wait for you to go to get on this instance and also to log in. After we log in, we go through the list of messages. As you can see, we did some tests prior to the webinar, and there are some messages that were received already on this cloud instance. If we look at the message filter, we can see there are the 3 default plugins that I told you about, and it's the web service plugin, the GMS plugin, and the file system plugin. The first one is the web service plugin, which we are going to use during this webinar. Then I will move on to the P mode, and I will show you the P mode of this Domibus instance. So what is a P mode? A P mode, it is the short for processing mode. Which is a collection of parameters, and it is like a contract between 2 access points. It defines the security between the 2 access points, the certificates that are going to be used, the type of algorithm for encryption and for signing. It can also define the compression, and it can also define how long the retention period, how long messages that are received on one access point or on the other access point will be kept, and depending on their different statuses, because we will have messages that were received, we will have messages that were already downloaded by the outer corner C4, and depending on the status of the message, in the P mode we define the retention period. Now, the P mode is configurable here in the admin console of Domibus, and I will walk you through it very briefly. So first we configure the parties that are talking between each other. As you can see right here, we call them red gateway and blue gateway. In our case, we are going to start the blue gateway on with the Docker instance, the step that we initially did. And the red gateway, it will be the cloud instance that I shared with you. Then if we look forward, we can see that right here it is defined the security that is used. It is an XML file that contains all the algorithms that are going to be used, the methods, the encryption of the body, the encryption of the payload, and so on. For every message, we define a retry period, a retry mechanism, and in this case it says for 12 minutes please retry 4 times and split the interval in a constant way. So every 3 minutes it will retry to send a message in case the receiving access point is down. And right here you can see the compressed payloads, which is true. In this case, all the payloads will be exchanged compressed. There are other features of the admin console that I'm planning to show, but right now I want to go back to to my dashboard to check whether Tomcat instance, my instance, has started. So it seems to be in the exact same place. I'm still waiting a bit for it. Might be because the webinar is taking, the WebEx is taking quite a lot of resources. So let me go on and show you a bit more about the Trustor. So one of the important details of an exchange is the trust between the 2 access points. So if we go back to the initial presentation, right here, I will just go back a little bit to the in here. We know that C1 is connected to C2, but they are basically in the same network, but between C2 and C3 we have the worldwide internet, and security is very important. Due to this, I will go back to the administration console and show you the Trustor. In here you can see that both public certificates of the blue gateway and the red gateway are configured. So when a message is received, this gateway, Domibus, can validate the signing of the validity of the signature for the sending access point. Okay. Now I will go back to the dashboard to see what is going on with my, and I will try to launch it again. So in case it started for you, please just wait for me to see what I can do. Okay, I recreated this file, and now I will go to the containers. I will try to remove it. This was not planned, but like every webinar, unplanned things happen. So I have the images. I will clean up the volumes in Docker, and I will go to the console and restart. I will check the logs. Docker has a lot of facilities, so I can also check the Docker statistics to see how the CPU and memory is used. And right now you can see that both of them are taking quite a lot of CPU. So I'm waiting for it to start. In the meantime, if you have questions, I think we can already take them. I will go on a bit with the presentation. This is how I already showed you that we configure the parties in the P mode. And then this is the trustor of how the public certificate of a file is of a digital public certificate of an access point looks like. In my case, it is the blue public certificate. And we did talk a bit about the runtime process. I will show you the steps that happen when a message is submitted from C1 to C2. The message arrives on C2, and first we have some validation of the user message, making sure that all the metadata of the message is there. Then, if the P mode configuration says that that the two access points should exchange compressed payloads, the message is compressed. And finally, and then in this order, we will sign the message. So I do have one. Okay, thank you for the answer. There is a question, is there a REST plugin for Domibus? And the answer, no, there is no REST plugin for Domibus, but Domibus supports the creation of custom plugins. So we have a cookbook, and in case you want to create your own custom plugin, you can follow the cookbook and reuse the examples that the default plugins that we provide, and build your own plugin. Okay, so sorry, I will go back to the processing steps. Before we encrypt the message is signed with the with the private certificate of the sender. So the sender has its own private certificate and will sign the message. And after that, the message is encrypted with the public certificate of the receiver, so that when the message arrives on the receiver, only the receiver is able to decrypt the message, because only the receiver will have its own private certificate. Next step is the localization of the recipient, of the other access point where to send, and finally the message is sent to the encrypted message is sent to the recipient. On the other side, on the receiving part, we have the message is received, and the first step is to decrypt the message using its own private certificate that only the receiver has access to, and then verifies the sender signature based on the public certificate made available by the sender. So you have to take from this that every access point has its own private certificate, and will need to share the public certificate with all the access points that it communicates with. The message is decompressed, and of course the receiver will perform its own validation. After everything is concluded that the message is correct, the metadata is there, the receiver will send an acknowledgement, which is also signed which is also signed to be for the security reason to the sending access point. And finally, the receiver will decide what to do with the message, to push it to the final recipient, to the outer corner C4, or to keep it for a longer period until, as long as the retention period it is specified in the processing mode. So a little bit about Domibus release 5.0 and Domibus in general. So Domibus follows the eDelivery AS4 profile version 1.15. The eDelivery AS4 profile, it is a profile of the Oasis AS4 and the EBMS3 core standards. Domibus supports can be deployed in Tomcat 9. So for Domibus 5.0 can be deployed in Tomcat 9, in WebLogic 12 and Wildfly 26. And it uses two databases, MySQL and Oracle. For Domibus 5.0 we have MySQL 8 and Oracle 12 and 19. For the technologies, the SOAP 1.2 with attachments is used, and it is specified in the AS4 standard. And then for the implementation, we are using the Apache CXF framework, which is a mature framework. It is open source and has a large community behind. It is safe, and all the improvements are made available quite often. Then also from Apache, we are using the WSS4J, which is the Java implementation of the security standards, and it implements the WS security header. And also we have the WS policy, which is the model and the syntax to define the algorithms for signing and encryption. In the AS4 profile, eDelivery AS4 profile, we are constantly updating the algorithms to the latest algorithms to be secure, to follow the security standards. For compression, gzip is always it's the only one available, and I already mentioned several times the 3 default plugins that that Domibus offers. Okay. So here I have the anatomy of a message, how a message looks like. And first I will mention the header, the messaging part, the user message, which is which contains the metadata of the message, the information about the message. And after that, it's the security header, which is quite heavy and contains all this, the encrypted key, the encrypted data, the signature key, the signature data. And you can see in here the algorithm AES 128 GCM is the latest RSA algorithm that is provided. So before we go to Q&A, I will go back to my Docker instance and hope that now it started. It has, let's see. Okay, I will try to see in here if it started. It looks like, okay. So it gives me a few. So right now I will repeat how we log into the admin console. So we copy from the webinar util. We copy HTTP localhost on port 8082 Domibus and put it in here. The login credentials are admin and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I will wait for you to log in. Please write in the chat if you manage to log in. And the first window that you will see is the messages, which is the one that is most important because we want to see the messages that we exchange. But before we can exchange messages, we need to go to the P mode. And in the current section, we have to upload the P mode that that is configured to configure the P mode for the connectivity with the instance, with the Domibus instance in the cloud. So I will click on upload. I wait for you to go to P mode current and then click on upload. Choose file. And now it is the moment to remember where you downloaded the webinar. So for me, it was in downloads, webinar. And if you go to P mode, you will have two P modes, two sample P modes. These come with the distribution, with the Domibus distribution. And for our instance, we have to pick the Domibus sample P mode blue. Open it. We have to put a description because we have the archive in here and we can always go back to a previous version of the P mode and click OK. Okay, so you should see P mode file has been successfully uploaded, the green message. I will wait for you a few seconds to do this step. And as I explained, we have in here the parties. For the red gateway, we have to configure the Domibus instance in the cloud. And for the blue gateway, we will configure our own Domibus instance. For our own Domibus instance, we know that instead of blue host name, it is localhost. And it is port 8082. I will put it in the chat for everyone to use. And then for the red host, I already shared, but I will share again, or you can pick it up also from the webinar. And it is this endpoint. So in the red host name, we fill in the new one, including the port. I will wait for you to have the same configuration. So red gateway is here. And blue gateway is here. And then we click save. We add the description, blue, red. And click OK. So as you can see, you can both upload the message or upload the pmode file, and you can also edit the pmode file in this window. So right now our instance is ready to exchange messages with the other Domibus instance. I will open SOAP UI, the substitute for corner 1 and corner 4. I will wait for you to open SOAP UI. Sometimes it starts pretty slowly. And now we so Domibus distribution comes with the SOAP UI, with a sample SOAP UI project with a test guide that has all the operations and is quite easy to use to send messages from SOAP UI to your access point. I will go to File. I will import the project. So File, Import Project. Go to Downloads, Webinar, and the AS4 test guide SOAP UI project XML. It is the SOAP UI project that we plan to use. Open. So I will wait for you to do these steps and have the AS4 test guide in your SOAP UI. Now in the web service submission, if you expand this, you will have business scenario. And in the business scenario, there are 14 steps to be tested. We will start with the first one, with send a message. Double click it. And in here you see the message, how we configure the message to submit it from C1 to C2. You can see here, I will enlarge this. So you can see here that from party it is Domibus blue, and to party it is Domibus red. And also that the payload in here, so this is the payload. If we copy this, and this is just for you to see, you don't need to do this step. If we go to the webinar util, you will see the payload. It is base64 encoded, and what it says, it is actually an XML, which says hello world. So this part, this XML, it is base64 encoded, and then it is added as the payload value for our test message. The message info contains a message ID. This can be provided by us, or it can be removed. If it is removed, then unique ID will be automatically generated. I say that let's use our own message ID. Please be aware that duplicate message IDs are not allowed. So I will put a number in here, 828, let's say. And now the message is ready to be sent to C2, so that C2 wraps it up and sends it to C3. One more thing we have to do is to configure the endpoint in here, and I will do it right here because it's easier. So our endpoint, it is HTTP localhost and port 8082. And the backend for the backend for the web service, it is right here. So we are now ready. I will wait for you to write this part instead of the endpoint. We can also configure it in here, but it is easier to just go here and put it. So now it's time to hit the red button. the message is sent from C1 to C2. And C2 responded with a submit response saying that the message ID webinar test 828 was accepted to be sent from C2 to C3. If now I go to my Domibus instance and click on the messages, I can see that the message, it is the webinar test 828. It is from party blue to party red and has the status acknowledged. The role of the access point is sending in this case, because every access point can have the role of sending and also of receiving. And now I will go to the cloud instance of Domibus and click on the messages. And here on the messages, I can see that we already have several messages. Thank you for this message. And this is my message, webinar test 828. So as I said, I can see that you already managed to have messages exchanged with the cloud instance. And congratulations for that. And now there is one more step to download the message. So we can either download it from the console and see it and look at it, or we can perform the last step, which is download from SOAP UI. I will copy the ID of my message. So please copy the ID of your message. And now I go to the download message in SOAP UI. And in here, we fill in the message ID. And for the endpoint, now we plan to download the message. So before before I hit the green button, now when we download from the receiving access point. And the receiving access point is, the endpoint is right here, the cloud instance. I will copy it, put it again in the chat as it's easier for you. I will put it here. Oh, not in the chat, here. Okay. And before I hit the green button, I will go back to the Domibus instance in the cloud. And you can see the message status in here, it is received for all the messages that were exchanged. Now I click the green button. I get the message. It is still base64 encoded. And if I go back to the admin console, search, and the message 828, it is downloaded. So the status has changed. If I want to check in the admin console the message, I can do so. I can click on, so I could do so before the message was downloaded. The message can only be downloaded once it was provided to the to C4, it cannot be downloaded anymore. But before that, I could have downloaded the message and check it locally on the file system. So I think that with this, we concluded the part of the hands-on. We were able to exchange a message, to send it from our local instance that finally started to the instance we configured in the cloud. I will show you one more test. I will go back to the send message, and in here remove the message info. I will just remove it. This is optional, this test. I will send it, and you can see that unique ID is provided. I will copy it, go back to the console, search for it, and you can see that it is acknowledged. Now, if I go to the cloud instance and search for it, there you go. We have several messages. This is the one that I sent. And now I plan to click on it and have the message on my local file system. The message metadata is here and the message payload is here. And as I said, the base64 encoded, it is actually an XML which says hello world. So with this, we can say congratulations to everyone that managed to send the message. Thank you for your time and your patience.